Hello and welcome to the Big Basket World Cup series. My name is Jyoti Varne. I'm a home baker and a food blogger from Bangalore. Today, I'm going to be cooking from a country that gave us a gentleman's game. That's right, cricket. Now, England, as we know, is famous for one more thing, which is the royal family. The dish that I'm going to be cooking today is an iconic culinary item, which is known as the Victorian Sponge Cake. Yes, it was Queen Victoria's favorite tea cake, which is something that the English are known for. That is the tea parties. Now, this is quite simple to make, easy to assemble, so let's get cooking. If cooking is an art, baking is a science. There's a reason why people say this. Ensure that all your ingredients are measured and at room temperature, unless the recipe calls out for a cold butter or a cold ingredient. Now, talking about a primary recipe, we would need softened butter, which is unsalted butter, and of course the flour, sugar, which are primary components of a sponge cake. Now, the Victorian sponge cake is primarily a tea cake. Now, this needs to be moist, needs to have a nice golden crust, and you can use any berry jam of your choice to top up the layers. So let's start with our ingredients first. This is about 125 grams of unsalted butter. I'm going to be adding this in my mixing bowl. To this, I would be adding in caster sugar. This is caster sugar, which is nothing but powdered sugar, which is available in any kitchen or even in baking supplies store. And we would be blending this together until they form a light, pale, fluffy consistency. Ensure that the butter and the sugar are well blended. It should always be like a buttercream consistency, no granules. This should take about 3 to 4 minutes. This is the kitchen temperature or where you live. You can also do this process in a stand mixer. You can see that the butter and the sugar are slowly coming in and are getting blended. So I'm going to add in 1 egg at a time. That's egg number 1. I'm adding in 1 tablespoon of vanilla. The reason why I'm adding vanilla now is I don't want that eggy smell when the cake bakes. So that's about 1 tablespoon. Just to show you, this is how normal butter looks. This is at room temperature and it's softened. And this is how a fluffy butter looks. So that's the consistency you should be aiming at when you're preparing any sponge. So let's start whisking the egg one at a time. I'm going to add in egg number 2. Finally, egg number 3. Whisk this up really well because this is the primary stage wherein the egg gets incorporated in the cake batter and makes that moist, fluffy texture. And we're done. This is a wet mix. Let's get started with the dry mix of the cake. I'm scooping out the sides of the bowl and I'm going to be adding this flour in 3 different portions. That's portion number 1. Stir this well. We do not want to beat out the air that we whisked in. Ensure that the flour that you're adding in is sieved so that there are no lumps in the batter. I'm not using the cut and fold method here because I do not want to beat out that air and I want my cake to be light and fluffy. That's the 3rd portion of the flour. When you're mixing in, ensure that you lift the batter and you stir it in because you might have lumps of the flour lying at the bottom and we do not want that. And finally, the last portion of the flour goes in as well. If you're in a hurry, you can also use the hand blender to do this process. That's 1 teaspoon baking powder. Now what I've done is I've lined this up with an aluminum foil. I've greased this up with butter. So this is going to let my cake release easily once the baking is done. So we're going to divide the batter in 2 portions because we would need 2 layers for this cake. So I'm adding in a nice big heap of the batter and I'm spreading it. What we're looking for is a good 1 to 2 inch rise in the cake so that it forms a good layer like a sandwich. I'm forming a smooth layer on the top so that there's no uneven batter or heaps that rise up as the cake bakes. You can do this even with an offset spatula. That works fine as well. So we've got the batter inside a 6-inch cake mold. Now this will go and bake in an oven that's preheated at about 180 degrees Celsius. It should take about 20 to 30 minutes depending on your oven, and what you should look out for is a nice golden crust on the top, and when you insert a toothpick it should absolutely come out clean. So let's go ahead and bake this. So cake's been in the oven for about 20 minutes and I can see that it's got a nice golden crust, so it's time to remove this from the oven. So gently pick this up, and it's hot. So this is the crust and the color that you should be aiming for. It's nice and flat, and when you touch it in the center it's moist. And let's demold this and get set with the setting up of the cake. So I'm removing the foil. As you can see, because I had greased the pan really well, the cake has separated by itself. So I'm going to remove the foil and get set with the layering of the cake. So we have another layer here which is already kept on the dolly paper. So for the coating, you would need about 50 grams of icing sugar. You would need a blueberry jam or a raspberry jam. We're also layering it up with some buttercream. You can also use non-dairy whipping cream if that's okay with you. So I've already piped this. So I'm piping the buttercream. If you want to use a offset spatula, that's also fine. This is a stiff buttercream that I'm using. I'm using an offset spatula to spread this evenly. The reason why I have piped this first and then I'm using an offset spatula is because I understand that not many of you are advanced bakers and you may not know how to pipe. So this just helps in terms of not having in the crumbs along with the cake. In case you want to pipe in and add in a little more cream, that's totally up to you as well. Next, layer it up with some blueberry jam or any jam of your choice. Just ensure that it's in the center because we do not want this to drip. This is a very rustic cake, also known as a nude cake, because we're not frosting the whole sponge. And then we add in the next layer. Ensure that both the ends meet and are placed well. You can press it a little bit. The top layer, we're going to dust it with a little bit of icing sugar. Let's add in some more jam in the center. I'm going to be adding in a little more cream so that it doesn't look a little blank. So there you have it, the Queen Victorian Sponge Cake. Now, like I mentioned before, this is absolutely easy to make, like how you've seen the video. And the imagination is left up to your choice in terms of whether you want to layer it up with a whipped cream, or you want to flavor it with a chocolate cocoa powder, or use various amounts of jams. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more recipes.